doesn't, I guess.
push it, put like
Yeah, yeah,
bring in some good music. Like, what do you got? And
yeah,
then
yeah,
challenge that music. Say, well, what is that? Like, is that good enough? Is that boring? Is that what these are the questions that get asked? It's never about like, this is cool, we can shred on this. It's no, it's like this all the bad plus has always been that way. Ethan too, very, very like not satisfied with this idea that it's enough to have a blowing vehicle or to mac out on your instrument without some sort of like purpose for that,
mm,
and to use a wide toolbox, maximalism, minimalism, you know different forms of harmony, changes, modal, free. These are things that can be juggled around in a way when you kind of understand and think of everything non-hierarchically. Is that a word? Without hierarchy,
yeah,
you can just the hierarchy is it good? Is it clear? Does it translate? Instead
yeah,
of it being like, like, oh, it's good enough because I get to shred over this. It's not. And that's kind of the nature of us, is we agree on that constantly. Like that, it's just there's got to be a purpose for why this goes there and that goes there.
mm,
And I have to say, some people might think that they're listening to this, or they might think, well, of course, that's everybody. No, it's not everybody.
absolutely, yeah,
I've been in many, many situations where that's not the case, where it's not the same level of thinking about it or not accepting just anything. That just because you can rip on a saxophone does not mean that's going to make great music.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah,
And for us, it typically signals boredom. Like what else you got after the first song?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
no, but it's true. Yeah, you guys like from the beginning, the tunes are 5 minutes long or
yeah, they're 5 minutes long.
3 minutes, or
And they're different. They're
yeah, yeah, and
different.
that's so important. Yeah,
That's the thing. You come. I mean,
absolutely.
if there's one thing I know we've accomplished, whether or not it's good to you or you hate it or you think whatever, but if you've come to see us, there's no way you don't notice that from tune to tune, it's a different vibe that has a
Yeah, yeah,
through line of a language, but it's not obvious what that language is. And it's not a cafeteria version of here's our free piece, here's our avant-garde, here's our odd time piece. It's no, it has all the elements
yeah,
kind of going through it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's different. And that's kind of what I mean. That's not by accident. That's like that's the grinder that everything goes through before it comes out the other side, where it's like, okay, that's cool enough, let's do that.
Mm,
And then we play it and get to know it and get to like from that tradition of like the song goes like this.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Did you guys? I mean, I've done this talk with Reed and Ethan, and I asked them both the same question. I want to hear your answer as well. Like, when you guys came out with, knowing me, knowing you, and all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
smells like Teen Spirit, whatever, like all
Yeah.
these great tunes. I mean, and there was Brett Meldau doing his Radiohead stuff already before. Did you guys already know? I mean, did you feel that it's gonna be so groundbreaking, like reinventing almost the genre or setting a new standard, or like,
No, we didn't.
mm,
In many ways, we thought about that. That was an idea that came from Reed and I.
mm,
We had messed with that a decade earlier in this
oh well.
project we did out in Los Angeles with this idea, whether or not it's groundbreaking, but of
I mean, in a
course,
sense,
jazz
like
music,
everyone then did it kind of after
correct.
you guys came out.
After us, it
After you,
became a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
acceptable. But Brad, of course, did Radiohead and was beautiful, and Miles doing Time After Time and all these things.
yeah.
But it's like so we Bill Frisell did Live to Tell from Have a Little Faith, which
Madonna, yeah, yeah.
I always loved that version.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah,
Yeah, and so it was from a tradition more that Frisell Live to Tell tradition of it's not an obvious like to me it's with all due respect it's more obvious to do a Radiohead tune as a jazz tune because it's already
absolutely.
kind of harmonically rich. But if you're thinking about Pixies Valoria, you're not sitting there going like, oh, it's so harmonically rich. My God, we could just put some jazz chords on it, and blow. For us, it was always to try to meet music that we thought was interesting with the idea of how do we hijack it completely and make it ours, not how we can
Mm,
make it jazz.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's where I think, inhabited a unique space. And that's why it challenged purists, and that's why but it also gained fans because obviously the band, so it's always been predominantly original music. But
Yeah.
when you're starting a group, it's like, well, who's got 50 tunes, So it's like, oh, we could play some standards, and we could also. What about this idea that Reed and I have been messed with for years, where we don't necessarily reharm things in a jazz perspective, but we rearrange them in a way where improvisers live, and we can sometimes use triadic harmony,
Yeah.
not just this sort of slap the jazz chords on
Yeah, yeah,
there.
augmented,
You got
whatever,
yourself a jazz
flash
tune
chords,
now.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if we eschewed that very quickly, and being a piano trio that does. If you got a guitar, live to tell, that's a little more obvious, right? In a brilliant. But with a piano trio, you immediately assumed, come on, we got to play that Bill Evans harmony language, and we got to blah 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 blah. And instead, Ethan's playing these, triads,
Yeah, yeah.
root position, bar chords. We got all this space harmonically, rhythmically to take it someplace that we thought belonged to our language, and that's why it was very rich territory for us for a while. And I think that's why it had the effect that it had with musicians and with non-musicians is simply because we kind of had it, we met it on its own terms,
Yeah.
and at the same time we made it sound like it could only come from us. Like, we chose material that wasn't the obvious jazz material. Heart of Glass, is not an obvious. You're not calling Heart of Glass at a jam session, right? You're not. Aphex Twin had not been dealt with in an acoustic way, and instead of doing an impression of electronic music like people had been doing, we played it like we play music. So the drums have this live, loose feel, even though it's using, breakbeat languages and drum rush languages.
Yeah,
it still doesn't have that sort of assassin Jojo Mayer, like, I play, this is a drum set doing electronic music. It wasn't like that.
No.
And you can hear it's got this kind of loose piano trio version. And that was more interesting to us, is not going, here's our impression of electronic music with acoustic instruments.
Yeah, yeah.
And that leads me to say, like, we finally made a record called Complex Emotions, but we've been using that term to describe ourselves for a long time. When you're told to describe it, we would say that from the Ethan era all the time, where we felt like you could either say, oh, that's ha ha ha, it's an acoustic trio playing Iron Man, or you could get a more complex emotional relationship with the source material. And to realize that actually it's got a doom element to it.
Yeah, yeah.
You can use lower frequency undertone, spectral harmony. We took it to this other space where we took it very seriously. And it doesn't mean we were without irony. We understand the ironic stance it could take, but it was more complex than that.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm saying. So yeah, that's where we lived and breathed, like a combination of being kind of, we felt sophisticated at the same time, earnestly going about this source material because we liked it. We thought it was challenging, and oftentimes it ended up being the most avant-garde shit we would do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're willing to torch Chariots of Fire like that, what is your statement ultimately? To me, the statement is ultimately, whoa, these guys are definitely edgy. It's not like we're trying to like play a film soundtrack version of Chariots of Fire at that point.
Absolutely. That's a heavy one. That one, yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite one we ever did, and that's why I cite it, because it had those elements of like an Albert Eiler language.
Yeah.
Of real like triumph. You could hear the love cry, triumphant nature of it.
Yeah.
But it's the theme of Chariots of Fire. It's just like, there's your complex emotion.
Exactly.